My name means multiply, and I'm also from Hermanus, a small town in outskirts of Cape Town.
Hello, my name is Jairo B. Khadot, and I'm from Hermanus, South Africa.
Hello everybody, my name is Arrison. I'm from South Africa in a city called Cape Town.
Good evening everyone, my name is Ayaboga, it means being thankful. I'm also from South Africa.
Hello everyone, my name is Busi, meaning to rebuild, and I'm from South Africa, Hermanus.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Yabonga. The meaning of my name means thank you. I'm also from South Africa in Cape Town. Yeah.
Hello everyone, my name is Lucia and I am also from South Africa and Cape Town. I'm a drummer, a drum maker, and also a singer. Yeah.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening.
My name is Tapelo Konwane. Tapelo means prayer. I'm from Zulihle, Hermanus, Western Cape, South Africa. Thank you very much.
Right, one thing about this group is that we don't like drumming on our own. African music is very much a communal thing to do, so we'd like you guys to join us. You can either drum on your lap or drum on the pew in front of you. So we're going to do a couple of exercises just to warm you up, and then we're going to play a couple of rhythms for you. Okay, thank you. Right, so first thing you need to do, put your hands on your lap, and you're going to roll your fingertips. There we go. Now transfer it to your hand. Take one finger on each hand. 2. We go with 3. Try 4. Bounce. And make first. Show me your elbows. Here we go. Back to your hands. Put it on your legs. Wake them up, put it on your chest, pop it on your head, and greet someone else. Try the other side. There we go. And now we go together. Up, 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 up. 1, 2, 3. Try your other hand. 1, 2, 3. Back we go. 1, 2, 3. Change again. Stay awake. Take. And you're gonna rock your shoulders and we're gonna up together. Nice. There we go. Let's give it some energy. Two hands on your left. We go. Tap, tap, tap. We go. So we'd like you to join us in playing the first rhythm. We have a porridge that we call mili pap. Mili is a corn, same thing as corn, and this rhythm is called mili pap, which is basically the porridge on a drum. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, snap. Up. Yep, here we go. And if you can manage, we go. 1, 2, drumming never stands on its own. It always goes with a couple of other things. One of them is this. You use your voice. And you're going to do it like this. We have permission from the neighborhood to make a noise. Breathe in. Now, you go to the middle of the drum. Nice deep sound. Breathe in again. Whoa! That's all out. Let's take that sound up through the room. There we go. If you can. So, we have a dance outside of Cape Town on the farms where the farm workers dance in the dust. It's called a real dance. A real dance. And all it means is that you start moving your feet on the floor, up and down. There we go. Keep it going, keep it going. 1, 2, 3, go! Take that movement up to your knees and shake it loose. Go!
Long story, but it's not in the showing. I say it's not in the showing, it looks he's young.
I hope you still enjoy. Now I'm going to give you another song. It's from one of the ethnic languages in South Africa called Xhosa, the language that Madiba Mandela spoke. Is Xhosa. And the name of the song is Igqirhalendlela uqongqothwane. Igqirhalendlela uqongqothwane. Qongqothwane, say after me. Qongqothwane. It's a big thing. Igqirha doctor. We're not only drummers, but we're also drum makers. Give us a round of applause. So these drums you are seeing us playing here, we made them on our own. We made them by the pellet. We collect pellet around Cape Town, and then we actually upcycle the wood. We dismantle them, and then we cut them into the size that we want a drum to be. We've got about 5 sizes of these drums. So this is the biggest one, and then the second one is 55. This is 65 centimeter, 55, 45, 35, and 20 centimeter. All of these drums, we've got same formula. All of them have got 18 pieces put together like a barrel, one barrel. And then how we are making them, we glue them with wood glue, hold them with metal rings, 2 metal rings, one at the bottom, one on top. And then we let them dry, we plane them. After planing them, we sand them off. When they smooth, then we drill holes. All the holes must be 18. In fact, these holes must be 18 because they have to correspond with these 2 metal rings here on top. There is one at the bottom of the goat skin and then the one on top with 18 knots so that we can be able to tighten up the head of this drum. And then there are also these holes for the sound. Our drums, you can just put it flat in front of you and then you play it. Whether you are wearing a skirt or you've got back pains, put it flat in front of you and then you play it. Thereafter, we paint it, put color, with this, we put a flag or we personalize it if one wants it so, and then we varnish them. So, but the skin, now there's another technique here on the skin because the skin, we got them treated. There's no poison. You can touch the skin and you go and eat. There will nothing that will happen to you. We got it wet. So after, we call it wet pool. We fit it and then we give it a slightly wet pool and then we let it dry outside. So it takes about 3 days if the weather allows. Then, when it's completely dry, we tune it, just like a guitar. We tune it so the tighter is your skin, the better is the sound of your drum. Thank you.
Yeah.
That is the Full Mood Youth Drummers. I think that we'll see them again tonight. How about that? I'm Kathy King. I'm the pastor here at First Presbyterian Tecumseh, and a group of us traveled to South Africa earlier this year, and we met with these folks at Full Mood. Full Mood is the name of a retreat center that is responsible for the youth leadership training program, and Edwin Arrison is the director that works with the young people, and then you also saw Bevel Spence and Ivy Schaefer, who are the actual drumming leaders and facilitators. But we're going to hear more from Edwin and from Rene in just a moment. I do want to make sure that everybody has one of these. Did you all get one of these when you came in? And if not, would you please raise your hand and we can make sure that you get one of these? So somebody, maybe from the back, could grab where these are, if they're in a stack out there, and then just come and, because I'm going to reference them now for you to show you what's here. This has been a multi-destination, multi-state tour in the United States for these folks. It has cost $55,000 to fly them all here to be with us. They're on a unity and healing drumming tour. So we are going to take a free will offering collection, receive a free will offering collection a little later in the worship service. And we do encourage you to give generously, because the work that they do is absolutely amazing with these young people. You're going to hear a little bit more about the program, and I think a little bit more about what life is like for these young people and why this is such an important work that they're doing that you have an opportunity to support. So that will be a little bit later in the program. If you open up the program, you'll see something falls out of the inside. This is an upcoming tour to Israel, Palestine, and also the second page, another trip to South Africa. So we did want you to have information about 2 upcoming tours with Indiana Center for Middle East Peace. The offering that we are going to receive later, we invite you to make a check out to First Presbyterian Church, Tecumseh, if you do it by check. or you can also go ahead and do cash, or you can do an online gift. Right in front of you in the pew is a little card that you can scan and go directly to our online giving. If you go through the online giving, we ask that you note that it's for full mood. And if you put a check in, if you would put in the memo line also that it's for full mood. We're going to do one check for Indiana Center for Middle East Peace because they've paid for the whole trip. So they're in the process of recovering that as we speak. They're not done now. They're a little over halfway, right, of your time. They're going to leave us and go to Goshen, and then they're going to go to Chicago. So they still have a lot more. But all day today, we were at Tecumseh High School. All day today, yes. Thank you, Karen Arnold and Joe McKinnon. Every hour, another group came into the library at the high school and they just kept growing in numbers because the word was getting out in the school. So more and more of the young people kept coming. It was just absolutely fantastic. So inside the folder, these are the young adults with their faces here for you, and then a description of the leaders, the drumming leaders at the bottom, and also Rene and Edwin at the top. They're both Anglican priests in South Africa, and we're going to hear a little bit more about them and the context in which they do ministry and work in South Africa. They also both have been colleagues of Desmond Tutu, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, winner of the Nobel Peace Prize. Both have worked alongside Desmond Tutu as a friend and colleague. So they'll be sharing a little bit about what life with him was like. And you can see a little picture of him with Edwin. Look at the height difference. A little man with a mighty spirit, right? And then a little description of the Youth Drumming Project. So that's for you to take with you to read a little bit more. And first you can go online also to hear about that. So Edwin and Rene and I spoke about how to best kind of get some of their stories out to you and also give you an opportunity to ask some questions. And we think we're going to do this with a little bit of an interviewing style. So I will ask a question of them, and they'll kind of riff on that question, and then I'll ask another. And then maybe some questions might form in your minds that you would like to ask them. So you can jot down if something comes to mind through our conversations that you would like to ask, and you'll have an opportunity to ask that. So my first question to you both, and I'm going to clear here so you can come up and speak. My first question to you both is, you've called this tour Drumming for Unity and Healing. And so I'm wondering, it's a three-part question. 3 parts. The first part is, when you called this unity and healing, when you think about unity and healing, when have you seen in your lives disunity? If you could describe kind of some of the context in which you've lived through disunity. And then when you've seen unity. And then the third part of the question is, what words of encouragement would you give us in this country, in this context? Words of encouragement about unity.
I'll take the shorter mic.
For obvious reasons.
So I was told to wear a clear collar this evening, and I did, and now I just look like I'm way too formal compared to Edwin, but I blame him for that. Oh, I don't know. Never mind. You can hear me, right? So my name is Rene, and I have been... Somebody asked me how I know Edwin, and I actually don't know the answer to that question. But he manages to drag me along to things, and has done so for a few years. Yeah, I am an Anglican priest, as you heard. I work for an international NGO called Tear Fund. For those of you who know organizations of World Vision, it's pretty similar to that. And I work as the Global Peace Building Strategist. And that kind of requires me to travel, to many places. I work in the 50 poorest countries in the world. We as an organization work in the 50 poorest countries. And yeah, it gives me great pleasure to take a step away from some of that work and be on this tour. Edwin and the people.
Thank you, Rene, and thank you, Kathy, for those profound questions. Multi-layered, multi-level questions. So let's start with signs of disunity that I've experienced in my own lifetime, and I recently celebrated my 50th anniversary as an Anglican priest, and Rene actually preached at that service. So I was ordained in 1992 as an Anglican priest. So I was trained in the mid-80s. And if any of you know anything about South Africa in the mid-80s, you would know that everyone was saying South Africa is going to blow up at any point. It was one of the most divided societies at the time. And someone like myself, I was in my early 20s, and I was part of youth movements, and particularly Christian youth movements. Okay, so those of you who are still young, there's still a moment for you to be part of a movement. Okay, and we knew that what was happening was profoundly evil. It wasn't just wrong. It was evil, and partly why I use that word is because it was justified with biblical texts, right? And we could not simply sit around and allow the Bible to be misused and abused in that way. So not only was there division in society, there was a deep division in the church itself. Does that sound familiar?
Unfortunately.
So we had to make a decision, and our decision was to be faithful to the one who unites all humanity, Jesus Christ. We want to be faithful to that Christ, to the Christ who draws all people to himself. And it was, of course, leaders such as Archbishop Tutu, Alan Busak, and many others who drew the lines very clearly, and who said to us that we are in what was then called a kairos moment, a moment when you have to act. And if you don't act, it is not only sad, but it is tragic. There's something tragic about not acting for unity. And so we decided that we were going to live in the new moment. In other words, we already had a vision of a non-racial, non-sexist South Africa. And we were not going to wait for anyone to dictate when that will occur. And so decided to start living that out in the now. And as you live it out, you are obviously living against the system at the time. And so again, some of us were put in prison because of that during that time. But it was important that we take the principled stand against it, so that we are able to move in God's narrow way. It is a narrow way, actually. And we were able to walk in that narrow way, even if it meant, suffering and even death. And quite honestly, because I was young, and I was working with other young people, there was no question about it, that we were literally willing to die for goodness, for truth. And because of that, the system came to an end, and we were able to see glimpses of that new unity, that new movement. So I'm privileged, I really am privileged, because this is not a theoretical thing for me, this is something I actually saw happening. And so whenever people say to me, oh, this is impossible, I say, by the way, I've heard that story many times before, and we have overcome that, and therefore nothing is impossible. So unity is possible. Let me stop there. I'm not sure if you want to add to the question, and your question was multi-layered. So
You got it.
So I just wanted to describe that, and therefore say to you, if any of what I said resonates here today, if any of what I've said resonates here today, don't be discouraged, because evil never has the last word. Goodness, truth, and beauty always has the last word. Hold on to goodness, truth, and beauty.
Thank you, Edwin. I think the question was, when did we see disunity? And I would say the story that Edwin just shared, certainly that was part of my upbringing. Growing up in segregated schools, segregated neighborhoods. Even our banking was segregated. The interest rates you paid on your credit card was based on the color of your skin. And in this world of, let me say, intentional, structured division, it was important that we learned a bigger story. At the moment, our Constitution says South Africa, and our Constitution belongs to everyone who lives in it. Not citizens, not people with passports, everyone. If you come to South Africa and you're there for 2 days, the Constitution applies to you. And so the story we tell had to be bigger than the story of our disunity. The small story was, this land has to belong to that race group, and that land has to belong to that race group. But the earth is the Lord's. And so we had to live into that big story, that we are all just custodians, and allow that story to shape not only our understanding of ourselves, but of the other. And so we have this ideas of unity in South Africa. You see pictures of black and white together in the same photograph, but that's not always what it was like. I would say one of the biggest divisions I experience in church is people tell me that I mustn't preach so much about politics. Now, we all preach politics. Some of us in support of the institution, and some of us against it. And my response to that is always, the terms we use to name Jesus, King of Kings, is not a religious title, it's political. Lord of Lords, that's political. Messiah, it's political. So you don't get to listen to the words of Jesus and not be political, because Jesus says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And so the moment I love my neighbor and care about the access to food, I'm involved in politics. If I care about what school they go to, that's politics. If I care about the quality of the roads they have to travel on, you can't get away from it in my understanding. But that's not everybody's understanding. And so I think Sometimes we get sold an idea of unity that is equal to uniformity. And I think those two things are very different. When we are called to unity in the midst of disunity, for me the unity comes when we learn how to disagree in a way that allows love to continue. Edwin and I don't agree on everything, and we don't have to. But the way I treat him because of how he thinks and what he believes is the demonstration of our unity or disunity. And I think some of the disunity sometimes is necessary, because some spaces can be quite violent. I know that as a black woman, sometimes I just need to get out of there. It's like, this is too crazy for me. But the archers used to talk about if we want him to be healed, we need to spend more time with our enemies than our friends. And so that's a different kind of invitation in the midst of the disunity, I would say. And then words from another church leader, Peter's story. When we were worshipping in churches that were racially divided, he used to say, the pain of being together is better than the pain of being apart. The pain of being together is better than the pain of being apart. And with that, for me, was an assumption. Being together can be painful. Sometimes a pain in your anatomy that you don't want to name in church. But that pain is better than the destruction of us being apart. So, I don't know if that helps with that. I don't know what part B is, I don't remember.
Thank you for that answer, both of you. I have another question, or two. So when we were in South Africa, they, just days after we left, they had their elections, and it was their 30th anniversary of democracy. 30th. So they're a young democracy. And you both were there when it started. So my question just to both of you is, what are your thoughts about democracy? How have your thoughts about democracy changed, perhaps, from when it started and how it is today?
I want to start by saying democracy is not always helpful. I did a lot of work in rural communities in South Africa, sort of after the first 5-10 years of our democracy. And the requirements of democracy means that you cannot do long-term planning. You have to think about the next election season. So you can only do the short-term work and then campaign so that you can do another short stint, and then your term is over. That is not helpful when you need to develop infrastructure and build a country that was as divided and as needy as South Africa was. And so issues of who owned the land and who owned the budget, normally those were two different groups of people. And that actually created a lot of conflict and disenfranchised the most vulnerable people in our country. So I would say, for developmental reasons, democracy is not a great idea. But 30 years on, we begin to see, certain things shifting and actually healing. On our ballot paper, we had 36 options for who to vote for. And I feel like our democracy is healthier now than it's ever been. In our first election, I very obviously voted for Nelson Mandela. That was a no-brainer. But in our second election, I didn't. the second election, I asked the question, what is the best decision for the health of our democracy? And that was not to vote for the ANC, because they had a 66%, more than 66% majority, and they were not delivering the services that they promised. And there needed to be very clear messaging. You can't just have a monopoly and do what you want. So I didn't vote for the ANC. And some people said I wasted my vote. That's okay. I voted for the health of our democracy. When it came to this election, I think every time I voted, literally I voted for different parties. Because I'm always asking the question, what's the best for the health of our democracy? And this year, for the first time, the African National Congress, the ANC, didn't win the outright majority. And so we now have a government of national unity, with a whole lot of different political parties responsible for governing the country. And some people say, isn't that a circus? And I say, absolutely. But at least we can speak to the monkeys. And the clowns know that they are required to deliver services to the poor. And so I think, yeah, those are my reflections on democracy. There's many other things I can say, but I think the lesson I learned to bring Archbishop Desmond into this is apartheid was instituted by a party called the National Party. And in the 1994 elections, even though I voted for Nelson Mandela, in our province, which you would call a state, in the state that is where Cape Town is in, the National Party won the election. And we devastated. And as we tried to take a breath, we heard, oh, Archbishop Tutu's going to be speaking, you know, at this rally, we should gather, and everybody got gathered together. And him not being a very tall man comes out and he goes, we are free! And everybody cheers. And he says, are we going to accept the results in Gauteng? Where the ANC won. Yeah! Are we going to accept the results in the Eastern Cape? Yeah! We screamed. And he went through every single province. And then he came to the Western Cape and said, are we going to accept the results in the Western Cape? And everybody went, boo! And he leaned into the microphone and he said, now, I've given my life for democracy, so that every person can choose their own leader. The Western Cape has chosen the National Party, and you will accept the result, because that's democracy. It's the only time I really wanted to punch him in the face. But he was right. And so, with the joy of democracy comes the pain, where not everybody agrees with me. And I think that's back to the unity question. But it was a very sobering and healthy reminder of what it is that we dream of, and the consequences of that.
Thank you. So I describe myself, one of my descriptions is that I'm a civil society activist. I don't know if you know that term, if you've heard that term. I'm a civil society activist. By that I mean that politics is a part of what happens in life, or formal politics and voting and so on, that's part, but it's not actually the most important part. It really is what happens between the elections that is the most important. and what we do and how we hold those accountable who have been elected. And so, in the 80s, certainly, while we were fighting apartheid, we had a body called the United Democratic Front. So this was a huge civil society movement covering every aspect of life, from trade unions through to sports organizations, everyone together, churches and so on. And one of the sins of the political organizing in South Africa has been the hollowing out of civil society activism and civil society movements. And we've been trying to recover that. And so I make it part of my duty to ensure that we have strong organizations in South Africa that can hold government accountable. And so we have wonderful institutions. Actually, we have a constitution, and then we've got various other things that we can take government to court, for example. We can do all kinds of things, and we've done that. So there's in the new South Africa since 1994, there was a movement called the Treatment Action Campaign. And if you want to study South Africa, the modern South Africa, the current South Africa, here was a movement that is focused on the issue of HIV and AIDS. But it was the most popular movement in South Africa. It operated across the country and actually won the struggle. It was about ARVs for those who are HIV positive and saving the lives of children and so on, of mothers who are HIV positive. So we are trying to replicate some of that and organizing around that. One of the features of South Africa is that we are not inward looking. So one of the features of our democracy is that we are actually outward looking. And for example, on the question of something like Palestine and what's happening between Palestine and Israel, Nelson Mandela had an intuition, and he expressed the intuition. He said, South Africa will never be free until Palestine is free. That's the intuition he expressed. And so as South Africans, it's very natural for us to say that we will not rest until there's justice for the Palestinian people. And so that's part of our, in a sense, our civil society activism and also our global activism. We do not only focus on ourselves, but we also focus on what happens in other parts of the globe. And we are particularly committed to ensuring that there is equality between the people of Israel and the people of Palestine. Nothing less will do. And so that is the position we have taken on that particular matter. And for me, democracy is a dynamic movement of people in society, whether you vote or not, for people in society to get themselves organized, to ensure that certain principles are upheld even during the elections. So that's what I'll say for now.
Okay, thank you.
I just have two more questions, and then I'd like to open it up for your questions as well. The drummers, the FOMO, it's Youth Leadership Training Program. And I want to just say something that we learned when we were there in terms of some of the ongoing challenges for this young democracy. The difference between rich and poor is significant, maybe biggest, didn't you say, like biggest? Largest in the world, disparity between the wealthy and the poor. 32% or something unemployment?
Yes.
32% unemployment. The average age of, we heard yesterday, the average age on the continent of Africa, 19 years old. So young people, high unemployment, high disparity, the villages that these young people come from, we walked through the village, and it's difficult. So I would like for you to just talk a little bit about why you do what you do. Like, what is the passion for helping these young people the way that you do? A little bit of your vision for it, and then I have one more question after we hear about this.
We had a conference in 2003 called SACLA, the South African Leadership Assembly. And in it we did some storytelling. And people shared stories about, the last 30 plus years in South Africa. And the following day we asked the question, what in the story of South Africa for you was the greatest carrier of hope? 5,000 church leaders in one room. More than 24 denominations. And I would say 90% of them said the student uprising of 1976. When young people took to the streets and said no more to discrimination. And so, what happened in 1976 with the actions of young people completely changed the trajectory of the struggle and awakened the global population to the horrors of what was happening in apartheid South Africa. They gunned down high school kids for resisting the government's instruction for them to learn, be educated in a language that they didn't understand. It's like saying to you, from tomorrow onwards, all your instruction will be in Afrikaans. Every subject at school, you'll be examined in this language that you are not able to speak. And so when they took to the streets to say no, they gave courage to people who were older than them, who didn't think that they could stand up to an empire. And it catapulted the struggle into a new phase. And so I would say young people, because historically, not only in South Africa but around the world, transformation and revolution has come from the actions of young people. The second for me is that there's a leadership vacuum, not only in South Africa but in the world. In the 80s we could name the global leaders, and now it's kind of not so sure. And of course, leadership by nature has changed over the decades, but there remains a leadership vacuum, and I think that young people have a lot more to teach us about our past than we can teach them about the future. Peter the Ace, a comedian in South Africa, says we need to engage with our past until our past becomes unpredictable. And so because I've been involved with young people, they have taught me what apartheid was, even though they never lived through it. All of us talk about apartheid as racial division and racial segregation. But apartheid was an economic system that used race as a criteria to enrich white people and impoverish black people. I learned that from young people. Because while I celebrate the fact that I can now live anywhere and go anywhere and there's no curfews and no state of emergency, they go, black people are poorer now than they were during apartheid. And they're right. And so it seems like economics has sort of, the veil has been pulled back in an apocalyptic kind of way. We thought the politicians were running the country, but now we know that's not true anymore. Money, economics, is driving the political agendas in so many countries around the world. And so there is a new struggle, and it is a global one. As the gap between the rich and the poor grow larger, it seems like, in the words of Archbishop Tutu, we learn from history that we do not learn from history. The French Revolution reminds us of nothing. And so, there's a meme that some people say, oh, that's very offensive, Rene, I don't know why you're sharing it. But for me, it's a provoking thought. One day the poor will have nothing to eat except the rich. And for us in the church, for us who claim to follow Jesus, if we have such a large disparity between rich and poor, there's something we misunderstand about the gospel. Because Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself. Or as yourself, love your neighbor. And if that were true, and we were truly disciples of this Jesus, there would be no poor among us. We see that of the outpouring of the Holy Spirit in Acts, and I'm not going to preach, I promise. But I would say the political agendas that drive stories about superiority and inferiority are probably among the most dangerous ones that exist in the world. And so, yeah, that becomes the work. And I have seen that work demonstrated most in the lives of young people. I would say, if you want to ask me for the GPS location of Jesus' teaching, I find it among young people more than any other place. So, the best thing I can do is invest my life in the lives of young people.
I clap because I agree with everything she says, for once. Rene and I used to take groups of young people to see Archbishop Tutu, so he was very generous with his time, of course, and he would sit and listen to the young people. And often they would ask him, one last message. Father, give us one last message. And I remember this one time he said to this group of young people, he said, go make life beautiful, especially for the poor. I've never forgotten that he would say that, to make life beautiful, especially for the poor. Young people, the beauty of young people, see us sitting in the back there. Fortunately the others are not here, so they can't hear me gossiping about them. But they challenge us, and I'm okay with that. I want them to challenge us. And ultimately the goal is empowerment of the young people. And I say to them, I don't want you to leave this program and be disempowered. The easiest thing for them to do is, I will depend on Edwin or Rene or whatever to do something for us. I'm not going to do anything for them. They must do it for themselves. And I allow them to make mistakes. I allow them to apologize. I allow them to come back, to explain why they're doing what they're doing. And then we continue, and I say to them constantly, and this is for me, bottom line. The bottom line is, I love you. That's the bottom line. So, whatever you do, I'm going to support you through it. Good or ill, I'm going to take you through it. I'm going to help you to take responsibility for your actions. And if you want to be angry with me, that's fine. Be angry with me. Fight with me. But I'm going to challenge you to do the right thing. They don't like that often. Oh no, you mustn't talk like that. I say, I will challenge you. I will make sure that you make these mistakes, and I will make sure you learn from it, so that when you leave this program, you leave as an empowered young person who has confidence and who has skills to be able to take the challenges of life, to deal with the challenges of life in a way that really befits an empowered young person. So that's my approach. Sometimes they're not always happy with me, but that's okay. It's important that I keep empowerment as the goal and use love as the foundation of what we do.
So would you raise your hand, please, if you knew Archbishop Desmond Tutu? If you actually knew him. Okay, I see one hand. So, and I see people, I know there are people right behind me that knew him. So what I'm going to assume is that all of us who didn't raise our hands don't have personal stories. So my last question is, I'm asking both Rene and Edwin to give us a favorite story of the Arch.
I think it's a little funny. I tore a ligament in my knee, and so I'm using a cane to help support me. The Arch had a cane that he walked with, but his commitment to the environment meant that he couldn't walk past any litter. And so Friday mornings we would walk from the cathedral to a coffee shop down the road, and no one else wanted the job of walking with him. Because with the guys, you would tell them, and then they have to pick up whatever litter they see. With me, he would walk. If the coffee shop was there and we're busy walking, he'll suddenly start going that way. And then he would bend down in his 80 plus years to pick up litter. And I used to tell him, if you fall, people will shout at me. So can you please stop picking up litter? Just point it out and I will pick it up. But he was ever the gentleman. And he eventually realized he couldn't bend down anymore because it was too difficult for me to try and lift him up again after he was stuck halfway bent over. And he would then walk to, if he saw, I don't know, a sweet wrapper or something, he would just go and stand where it was and not move. And so what I learned quickly was to scan the path ahead of us, and if I saw anything, I would just go ahead and pick it up, so that we could avoid all the drama afterwards. And it's hard for me to walk past litter now.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not convenient because, my hands are clean and whatever that is really filthy, and there's no way to wash my hands. And I kind of love it and hate it at the same time that I pick up litter because of my love for him.
So my story is an old one, 1993 story. I don't know if any of you know of Michael Battle. He's a priest, an Episcopal priest in this country. And he's written many books about the Arch. And the latest one was a spiritual biography of Archbishop Tutu. Now Michael and I were very good friends, and he stayed with me for 6 months because he was going to be ordained by Archbishop Tutu in the cathedral in Cape Town. He's an African American, but he was going to be ordained in Cape Town, so he stayed with me. And as we were approaching Christmas, we decided that we would ask the Arch to come and do the Christmas service at the parish where we served, which was really the poorest, one of the poorest parishes, or the poorest congregation in the Diocese of Cape Town. So the two of us went in and said, Father, what are you doing for Christmas Day? You know, why? So he said, well, you know, there's a 9 o'clock service at this particular congregation, and we thought it would be a good idea if you could come and do the service. And he immediately said, well, just check with my, I don't think I'm doing anything, so just tell her to put it in my diary, I will come and do the service. So here's the Archbishop of Cape Town, Desmond Tutu, Nobel Peace Prize winner, and he just says, yes, put it in my diary, I will be there. So he arrives, that morning I know he wasn't feeling particularly well, but he comes into this congregation, and of course I'm nervous because I'm not sure what's going to happen here this morning. But the congregation is packed out. Children are sitting on the floor that morning. And when he enters the pulpit, I kind of think, will he be able to connect with this congregation? And I didn't have to worry really, because as he was speaking, he looked at the congregation and he said, each of you, you're a kettle. You know what a kettle is? In America, I think you would say a
kettle.
A kettle.
A teapot?
A kettle, yes. A kettle. In English we say kettle. I know in American we say
teapot?
Kettle. Yeah, like a teapot. But yeah. So kettle. Each of you. But he says, a kettle in a box, standing in a box, or even standing there in the kitchen, means nothing. It is just a kettle. So the congregation looked at him. Okay. And each one of you is a kettle. And then he said, so in other words, you can say you're a Christian, you can identify yourself as a Christian, you can do, but that's all you are. A kettle is only effective when it is filled with water. Right?
Yeah.
People say, right. Now you are going to become worthy of the name of a kettle. He said, so pray to God that He will fill you with living water. Every one of you. Then he says, but it still means nothing. You're only a kettle filled with water. You have to be plugged into a power source. I understood, yes. Of course, the power source is the Holy Spirit. So, and he says, even that is not enough yet. You have to be switched on. Then you are doing the work of a kettle. You can decide what that means for yourselves.
So I would like to invite you, if you have questions, if you would raise your hand and I will bring the microphone to you and you can ask your question of these two. And then, Sia, are you going to be up again with music? No? Oh. No? Oh. Maybe? Do you want? questions? What questions do you have? Here's your hand if you have a question.
First of all, thank you for today.
My favorite teacher at Tecumseh was Rene.
Joy. So much joy today. Which doesn't sound like that in my voice right now, but it was an amazing experience, so thank you so much. One of the things that I have been curious about, the protest music that you were listening to during those years of apartheid is something that I learned a few years ago, and I'm curious to find out if this is true. We have a Detroit artist named Rodriguez, who was basically, I think, like a Bob Dylan for you guys at that time. But Rodriguez himself didn't even know that he had that impact until years and years later. Is this all accurate? Is this matching the documentary that I heard?
Yep. I think the song that made him famous in South Africa was called Sugar Man.
Yeah.
And, somebody wanted to know about the origin of the song, and so they went and researched it, and they sort of Googled this guy and then found out he's still alive.
I thought he was dead.
Everybody just assumed that he was dead. But there he was, alive in Latin America, and he was blissfully unaware of the fact that many, many South Africans knew his song. And so they asked him if he would come to South Africa to play it, and he arrived and was like completely blown away by how many people knew his music, and they sang along with him. And so I think the documentary is pretty accurate in terms of he's now, the connection with South Africa and other musicians in his circle as well as in South Africa to, regenerate some of that, the work that he had done in South Africa through music.
Yeah. So, we knew apartheid couldn't stand, basically because we would sing it away. I mean, there was the kind of music we're hearing here tonight. Think of this that we heard here tonight, and we will still hear again. Think of this, but think of it times 10, times 50. And it was, from the moments of deepest sadness, there would be a song called Senzeni Now. Senzeni Now, Senzeni Now, Senzeni, Senzeni Now, Senzeni Now, Senzeni, what have we done? 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 What have we? And we answer that by saying, my only sin is the color of my skin. My only sin is the color of my skin. My only sin is the color of my skin. My only sin is the color And so you can hear that there's a deep, deep, deep sadness. At the same time, there's a deep joy. Because we know that it's nonsense that our sin is the color of our skin. And so we sing about it and we kind of sing oppression away. There's the four-part, what is that? Amandla. If you just Google Amandla, there's the sort of struggle in four-part harmony. And you'll find all the music, or a lot of the music there. Now let me stop now. I'll sing the whole night if you want me to.
Any other questions?
Let's get to the back there.
Thank you for coming, all of you. I want to do a serious qualifier on I knew Desmond Tutu. I went to a church in Southern California, and the pastor was very much a peace and unity preacher, which was difficult since it was a very, very wealthy community. I was not wealthy. But I was there because it had a fantastic young adult program. So one night, he came to speak, light supper, speak. The room was only half full, and everybody left right away. And you could see the disappointment in his face. This is about 1986, something like that. So, sitting here tonight, I just hear through your words and your song, the flood of memories that I received during the meeting, and then I was headed to my car. I was invited to go into the pastor's office with the two of them, and 3.5 hours later, we went home. And amazing man. So my question to you is personally, not as far as organizational or anything like that. What effect did the two gentlemen, Archbishop Tutu and President Nelson Mandela, have on you?
I was fortunate to meet Nelson Mandela before he became president, but he was like this larger-than-life legend. And we were at a conference, and he came and addressed the conference. And so he was, in the center, in the podium, and as he came in, all his security details sort of filed into the room and created this passage for him, to walk up to the podium. And he stood up there and addressed everyone, and everybody was cheering, and, he was amazing. And it came to the end of his time with us. And so all the security guys sort of lined up again, to create a path for him to walk out. But he walked down and started walking in the opposite direction. Very typical of Mandela. But I quickly realized he's coming my way. Because I was sitting, all those of us who were facilitating workshops were given seats in the front. And I was like, whoa, I'm gonna meet Mandela. And so I had my camera with me, and they said no flash photography because his eyesight, from the limestone quarry, we mustn't use flash photography. And I thought, I'm gonna wait until he's really close so that I can get a good shot. And as he came closer and closer, I kind of just, my jaw got closer and closer to the ground. And I don't know what happened to my camera, but the next thing, he was holding my hand. And he took my hand into both of his hands, and he looked at me and he said, thank you so much. Thank you for all that you're doing. I really appreciate you. And I was like, and then he walked and started shaking the next person's hand. And I felt like $1,000,000. And I would say the arch had the same effect on people. They were great because when you were with them, you felt great. That greatness was not about how much power they had, but about how you felt when you were with them. And I was doing, Archbishop Tutu sometimes used to phone me. He called me OC, which is big sister. Makes no sense. He was double my age. And the phone rings and he's like, "Come, OC. We're going to visit whoever." He loved visiting sick people. And so I went over to the house, went to this hospital, and he's wearing his cap, you know, just dressed in ordinary clothes. We get into the elevator, and we're standing, and nobody recognizes him. And then this lady goes, "Excuse me, excuse me." And he goes, "Yes." And she says, "Are you Desmond Tutu?" And he goes, "Was it my nose?" And as soon as they hear his voice, they know it's him. And so everybody pulls out their mobile phones and they take in selfies and, you know. And they're asking me, "Can I have a photo with him?" And I asked him, "What do you want me to do when people ask me for a photo with you?" And he looked at me and he said, "Look at their faces. Look how much joy it brings them. It costs me nothing. Of course you can take a photo." And yeah, those two stories for me, personally, in my experience with them, was that you felt seen, and that they were always ready with a word of affirmation and encouragement to give to people that they didn't know. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I was also privileged to meet Nelson Mandela 3 times. Once before he became president, and twice when he was president. And actually, my own sister worked for him as a personal assistant as well, so very, very close connection with him. I think the thing that struck me most, and this is mainly now about Archbishop Tutu, was really the fact that he was a servant leader. And he wasn't faking it. He really wasn't faking it. This is just who he was. In the last few years of his life, he lived in Hermanus, which is a town where all of us, except Rene, where all of us come from. And I had the privilege of looking after them as an old couple during COVID period. Not many people were able to see them during that time, and so I was one of the people who saw him often, him and Mama Leia, his wife, often. And one day Mama Leia asked me if I can find a gardener for them, someone who could come and do their garden. And I found someone, and I took the person to them, and he was working in the garden, and then I fetched him again in the afternoon. And when I took him home, he said to me, "Can you believe it? The Arch made me a sandwich and tea for lunch, and he brought it to me." And this is who he was. Now, I can tell you many stories like that, but it was genuinely that he was really the kind of servant leader. He refused to have a chauffeur, he refused to have security detail, he refused all of that. When he was given big money to buy a car, he bought the cheapest possible car that would get him from point A to point B. He wasn't into these money stories and so on. He was really a very simple human being who really just wanted to serve. And I knew, in terms of what he was doing. You know, again, I can tell many stories, but I knew that every time he did this, even with the picking up of the litter, he wanted to teach us that we too must be servant leaders. And so if I do not serve, you guys must remind me, yeah? If I do not serve, then tell me that I'm not doing what Archbishop Tutu would have done. So that I can say more, but I think that's all I will say for now. That's what affected me most in terms of the arch.
Thank you, Edwin. Thank you, Rene. I'm going to pass a plate on this half of the sanctuary and another one on this half of the sanctuary. If you could just kind of pass it row to row. And are we able to listen to you one more time?
Yeah.
You all?
So let's listen to
We'll sing a song. Thank you. We'll sing a song. It's actually a prayer. It says, Father, lead me, lead me in these trials and tribulations. And the second verse says, thank you, Father, that I'm still alive.
Just one more time for the Volmont Youth Leadership Group. I would like to offer a prayer as we send them from this place to the next place that they go. Please join me in prayer. God of all light, God of all love, travel with these young people as they go from this place. They begin to leave town tomorrow. They'll be with the sisters and Adrian tomorrow morning, and then they will receive a blessing there and give a blessing there and then go on. So we pray for your traveling mercies with them, that all of the places that they will go, their hearts will be open to receive your love and be open to give your love. That they may be channels, they may be kettles filled with living water, plugged into your source and turned on with joy. We pray this in your name, the name that is above all names. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for coming tonight.